Morning everyone, beautiful morning here. I'm surrounded by green and I'm wearing green, and the reason being is because I'm going to be talking about improving one of the green behaviours. Now remember, thinking, communicating and improving are the three green behaviours that if you do them will take you, your people and your organisation upwards, make them better, versus the amber behaviours that are going to keep you where you are, keep things the same, and versus the red and brown behaviours that if you do them too much will take you and your people and your organisation backwards. So the reason I'm wearing green is because I'm going to be talking about improving. Now this story is going to include a number of different colours and behaviours, so stay with me, but it is all with a view to improving. So did a personal diary detox with a senior manager within an organisation. And as we touched on the second step, evaluate, where you start to understand the value you're getting, so you put a diary detox behaviour or category to each of the things that you do. We touched on a particular 2-hour meeting, and that 2-hour meeting occurred every week, and it was their team meeting. So it was the meeting that they had with themselves and the people that worked for them. And when we spoke about it, I always start off the conversation by saying, what is this meeting? What should it be about? And they said it should be about making sure that everything's going okay, everybody's doing what they should be doing, blah, blah, blah. Now, for those of you that have seen other videos, that sounds like a monitoring, amber behaviour. You're making sure that everything is happening the way it should be happening. Is that wrong? Not at all. If that's what the meeting's there for, that's what the meeting's there for. However, as we went through each of the categories and we looked at which one described the value they were getting out of that meeting, here's the interesting thing. It was floating. Now we are going to talk about improving, believe me, but this was a key moment for them. Because when we spoke about why it was floating, and remember, floating is where you're not getting any value from it, or you're not sure what value you got. So the reason that that was happening was because they said, well, I don't know if you've ever had this, they said, but sometimes I just get the impression, that the meeting's done over the phone. It's a conference call. And yes, I get some feedback, but more often than not, I often find that when I ask somebody a question on it, they will come back and they'll go, oh, sorry, I lost the connection for a second. And they said, I don't honestly believe that's what's happening. It feels like they're bored and they're turning off. And when I call their name, they're kind of realizing they should have been listening. And so I agreed. I said, that does sound like a floating meeting. It sounds like you're losing the people in the meeting. So this is what should be an amber meeting, making sure things are happening the way they should. There's actually a brown floating meeting. So where does the green come in? Well, I think it was the conversation that we had next. So in the next conversation that we had, I don't mean days apart, I mean right afterwards, we started doing some green behaviour, which was communicating. And I started sharing some ideas of what could be done to improve that situation. And I said, well, okay, who runs the meeting? And they said, well, I do. And I said, well, just out of interest, why do you run it? And they said, well, because it's my job to run the meeting. And that was an interesting one, because even if it weren't a brown floating meeting, at very best, the majority of their time would be spent doing. They're running the meeting. They're carrying out the task. They're the one running the agenda. They're the one taking the notes. They're the one doing everything. That's red behaviour. Now, red behaviour isn't bad as long as you don't do it too much. But here's the problem. They were trying to do the meeting. They were effectively doing it as a red meeting, but everybody was switching off and it was actually a brown meeting. And I said, what would happen if you gave the running of that meeting to one of your team? Better still, even cycle it around the team. Every week, someone else runs it. And here's what they said. Can I do that? And it's like, of course you can do it. It's your team. You do what you like. I said, but here's what will happen. I said, first of all, you're going to keep everybody engaged, because you can't lose focus while you're running something. You can only lose focus when you're not running it, when you're just a bystander. But here's the other thing. I said, they might do it better than you. They might come up with an idea that you'd never thought of in that meeting. They may make that meeting into something that you just didn't realize it could be. So at that point, we're communicating new ideas, and we're discussing the pros and cons of doing that. But as a result of doing that, they did actually make that change. They did it. Morning. They changed it so that the people who were going to be coming to the meeting were going to run the meeting themselves. Now, what was brilliant about that is that after doing that for a couple of weeks, they found that the meeting was better. Their people did that meeting far better than they had, because if they were really honest, they were a bit bored of running that meeting. But what it did is it grew the people who were running the meeting. It was showing your people you trust them, you want to grow them. I'm going to give you some responsibility. I want you to bring your ideas. That had a massive effect, and that's improving. So even though that was supposed to be an amber meeting, which was actually, for them, probably more red, but in fact ended up being brown because people were bored, and just through some green communicating behaviour, you could argue there was a bit of thinking beforehand for us to think about it and then suggest the ideas. But that green communicating behaviour then turned into I'm going to do that. I'm going to see what happens. And not only was it an opportunity for them to teach them something, but their people grew. They got more enthusiastic because they said, oh my God, you're giving me responsibility. That's brilliant. Green behaviour works because ultimately it makes things better. That's it for today. It's all about improving. Have a great day. Have a great week.